All right, let's talk about a show. It's a little more geared toward my demo, The Boys, which I'm not a big fan of the name, but it's a great show. I mean, TLDR, short version of this little review, just watch it. I had my reservations. I remember I first heard about it when I watched Rough and Rowdy 9. I guess The Boys was a sponsor. I keep seeing the TV spots, the promos, and for some reason they would air back to back to back. And it's like, you know, anytime that happens, you notice. You can tune it out the first time, but then the second time you're like, didn't I just watch this? And so the promos were like, I don't know. It just seems like some kooky superhero shit. And it's like, have we jumped the shark with superheroes? Is it too much? And finally, I was just like, all right, I'm by myself. I don't know if I need a break from The Sopranos. I'll watch Glow with the wife, but I'm by myself. There's only one episode of Hard Knocks out. I watched it. What do I do now? The Boys. And I did not disappoint. It did not disappoint. Okay. If you're not familiar, I didn't know this. It's a comic book series, The Boys. No clue. But as I'm watching it, I get a lot of Watchmen vibes. So if I had to make like a quick tweet, like a one sentence like synopsis of the series, it's like The Watchmen, a modern day version, since I guess, you know, the movie came out in 85, an alternate version of 85. So this would be a more contemporary, more modern version of Watchmen, and funnier. It's dark comedy. It's black comedy, but it's funnier than Watchmen. And Watchmen had some of its absurdities. You know, it was willing to go where a lot of comics didn't, as far as TV and movies go. I don't know about, you know, I'm not a huge comic book guy. I've only read maybe one in my life, but most of the time, the movie and TV version of comic books for like DC and Marvel, they don't really dive into the nitty gritty stuff, the real life problems of these superheroes. The Boys does that, and it feels real. It doesn't feel fake in any way. But the official synopsis is it's an irreverent take on what happens when superheroes, who are as popular as celebrities, athletes, you know, influential as politicians, when they're revered as gods, when they abuse their superpowers rather than use them for good. It's the powerless against the super powerful. And so The Boys, which is the title, are a group of vigilantes that are seeking to kind of keep the superheroes in check and to bring them down when they are corrupted, you know, when they're doing foul shit. And of course, the superheroes are backed by a company called Vought, which the whole time, the first episode or two, maybe three, you're just trying to wrap your head around. You're like, this is familiar. This feels familiar. Oh, okay. Yeah, that is this. This is that. I get it. And Vought, I was trying to figure it out. Like, what? Okay, you could say Marvel, but Vought is this corporation that manages superheroes essentially and monetizes them through movies, TVs, books, you know, apparel, partnerships, promotional partnerships with other brands. And so right off the bat, you're like, okay, it's Marvel, DC Comics. But then I saw that they own a news network, and it's Vought News, and it just sounded like Fox News. And I was like, okay, this is kind of like Fox in the way that Fox likes to dabble and dip its toe into the political sphere, and use outspoken personalities that are very popular to deliver their message. And so that's where I got the comparison there. Credit to me. Quick rundown of the cast of characters. There's the 7, which are, I guess you could consider them like 7 of the top superheroes in the world. They're kind of like the Justice League or the Avengers. You have A-Train, who is kind of like the Flash, although I compared him to, I think he kind of has the similar look as Anthony Mackie, who plays Falcon in the Avengers. He has like the same kind of goggles and look, but he also looks like the Atlanta Braves mascot, the Freeze. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google that shit. It's this guy who just wears like spandex and goggles and just he sprints from one foul pole to the other. And he gives like he challenges fans. So the fans come down and they get a head start. He gives them like halfway to go, and then he turns on the jets and he wins every time. It's fantastic to watch. Mostly because when the guy flies past the fan always collapses and just is like in disbelief, falls down. But you know, I guess the more direct comparison is like the Flash or Quicksilver. You have Queen Maeve, who is kind of like Wonder Woman, meets Xena, warrior princess. She's a bit of an alcoholic. They don't lean too much into that on the show. Apparently in the comics, which I didn't read, she's more of a mess. In this show, she's kind of jaded. Like she's been there, done that. She's seen everything. She's been harassed. She's been through the ringer because she's the only female at that point. She's the only female in the all male 7. And so she's kind of represents the, I guess, the old school. I mean, she's not old, but old school woman who has kind of just put up with this locker room type atmosphere. You know, the good old boys club, which I thought the boys that was a reference to initially was like, all right, it's a boys club. Superheroes is a boys club because the men are more revered or, you know, have a bigger presence, bigger following, and no one takes the women seriously. The women are viewed as sex objects, and they're not. No one listens to them. No one cares what they have to say. And so she's kind of just put up with it because she wants to survive. It's a good living, and, you know, just grin and bear it is kind of her approach to everything. And you get Starlight come in. I don't have a direct comparison for Starlight. There were some comic book aficionados who compared her to the Dazzler and Dr. Light, 2 characters I've never heard of. I got a shrug on that one. But for me, the actress Erin Moriarty looks like a blonde Selena Gomez. And I compared her to kind of had when she was trying to vamp herself up and she was taking on this sexier look. She looked like Emma Frost, the character that January Jones played in X-Men First Class. That's kind of the look she had. But I would compare her to Captain Marvel a little bit. The modern day Captain Marvel played by, dear God, I cannot believe I forgot her name already. Very famous actress. She was in Room. That sucks. My memory sucks. Anyway, the modern day Captain Marvel that they've been rolling out. You know, in the first episode, she's, you know, gets a dream come true. She's now part of the 7, which she's been dreaming about since she was a girl. She gets to partner with and hang out with the Deep, who is the direct comparison for him would be Aquaman. Can talk to fish and other seafood. And so she's talking to him about like, wow, this is so great. Like I had a crush on you when I was a schoolgirl. And of course he pulls like a Louis C.K. Harvey Weinstein move and like drops trowel in front of her and is like, hey, do you want to be a part of the team? You're going to have to do this first. What are we going to do about this? Which, you know, hand up, I've used that line, but it was in a moment that made sense. Consensual. It was heading in that direction. No misreading on my part, but it's a great line when it's consensual and it looks, you know, everyone's on the same page. Great line. When you're a new coworker and you're just trying to like, you know, you're just trying to get to know each other on a professional level, not the line to go with. So the assumption there is that she did something. We're not sure if it's rape or oral or whatever, but she did something. So she thought he had this kind of high level power to get her in trouble and get her kicked off and sent back to Iowa, where she's from. And so most of her character arc, her storyline, and his storyline proceeds from that. You know, she's trying to come to terms with the fact that, you know, and the tagline says it. It's all in the tagline. Never meet your heroes. She meets her heroes and she finds out, god damn, these people are warped, deviants, pervs, sociopaths. And there's the argument to be made. It's like it's kind of a more realistic portrayal of people that are superhumans, people with superpowers. Think about people that have normal powers. I mean, not even like CEOs or anything like that. Just people in our management level earning $70K a year and the kind of flex that they have on people. So, you know, it's her rapidly advancing from naive, gullible, small town Midwestern gal who kind of trusts everyone and is blinded by her hopes to a person who becomes very strong, stands up for herself, and I guess empowered is the word that you could use. So yeah, I mean, she's a great character, I think. A-Train sucks. The Deep gets off on a bad foot. Gets off on the wrong webbed foot with the audience, at least. It's played by Chase Crawford, who's a dreamboat. Hot dude, so I guess that there's still people willing to overlook everything, the fact that he did this horrible shit because he's so good looking. I'm not one of those people, so he was automatically in the shit camp. But then over the course of the season, he gets what most people really think about Aquaman. All the jokes that Aquaman gets, he has to endure throughout the show. And you find out that he's going to a therapist, and like that's a funny scene because he's talking about his relationship with dolphins and how they're really hilarious when you get to know them. And it's like, you know, he goes to a supermarket and there's a lobster about to be murdered. And he's like, don't worry, I got you, bro. He's like, picks out the lobster. He's like, I'll take that one home with me. And of course, dude sticks a knife right in the lobster's head. I mean, just, they did an amazing job. He became the comic relief, which is, you know, people take issue with that, but this is a show that's no holds barred. This is like, and apparently the comics are even more over the top. But this show, you know, when he's the comic relief and he got off on such a horrible foot. I mean, people were comparing him to Lannister. The Dragon Slayer from Game of Thrones, saying like, I mean, Lannister basically murdered a kid, pushed him out of a friggin' tower. And then he kind of came around towards the end and you started to feel for him and you were rooting for him towards the end. But yeah, that's kind of the journey that the Deep goes on. Much funnier than Lannister, as it turns out. But yeah, I mean, he's trying to save the dolphin. And he's saying like, you know, he's trying to be like, you know, just calm down. Like it was a one-time thing, and implying that he's kind of like, you know, had sex with the dolphin. Extremely dark comedy. Like he gets exiled to Sandusky, Ohio, which is fitting. Now Sandusky, Ohio, like you say that, and I think of Tommy Boy, the movie Tommy Boy, and like how Callahan Auto Parts was based out of Sandusky, Ohio, and how Tommy needed to save Callahan to save Sandusky, Ohio. Of course, it's taking on a different meaning now, and I've seen this in like message boards and, you know, chat, whatever forums, is like people see Sandusky now and they're like, oh, you know, the creeper Penn State coach who took advantage of boys. So you have that tie to it. But he gets banished there, and he ends up having done to him what he did to Starlight. He gets taken advantage of sexually. a woman, a rando, forces herself on him and fingers his gills when he didn't want it. That, I mean, and there was a lot of weird, crazy, gory, just gratuitous scenery in this show from start to finish. Just like jaw-dropping, eye-popping, like, can't believe that happened, can't believe they showed that. And that, for me, might have been the most disturbing. It just, the sound effects, and it was just uncomfortable. And the special effects, I mean, were just off the charts amazing. I don't know that you can do any better than the special effects they had. It didn't feel like, you know how you see a promo for a sci-fi show, like the network Sci-Fi, SYFY, and you're like, oh man, I could probably get into that. And then you watch like you keep watching the promo or whatever. Maybe you tune in for the first 5 minutes and the special effects are dog shit. And you're like, I don't know. I can't. I don't know. Not the case here. I mean, like movie level quality special effects. You know, I've already given out a lot of spoilers, but spoiler, when A-Train, check the timestamps, by the way, people. If you haven't seen it, you got to know I'm going to be talking about details. Check the timestamps. Not that anyone is watching at 51 minutes into the show. Found that out. Thanks, analytics. But when A-Train runs over Robin, like runs through Robin, who is Hughie's girlfriend. Now, Hughie is played by Jack Quaid. He's Dennis Quaid's son. You probably saw him in the rom-com Plus One, which I also highly recommend if you're into romantic comedies, as I am. I know not many dudes are, but I like him. And he was good in it. He plays like just this average Joe type of guy that works in an electronics store, AV salesman, installation guy. He has a girlfriend, Robin. He's talking to her. She's kind of in the street. He's on the sidewalk, and A-Train just blows right through her. And that is the scene. This is in episode 1. This is the scene that got me hooked. When that happened, I was like, holy shit, this show just got interesting. The special effects, because when it first happens, you just see kind of like a whoosh, a breeze go by. There's hair, he closes his eyes and there's like wind blowing by him. And then you kind of look to your right and it's just like Robin is just, you just see teeth and like fragments of her skeleton and a whole mess of blood. Whoa. You know, I've never seen anything like that. And I was like, all right, you got me. I'm tuned in. I'm honed in. Let's do this. And then I couldn't stop watching from that point on. But A-Train, he kind of sucks, right? And it's unfortunate. I mean, the actor did a phenomenal job. I think he has to put on this persona public, and they all do. All the superheroes, they have their public persona, shiny, happy, marketable, I guess, likable. But then they have their private persona, which is flawed, more human than human, if you will. And they never really get to dive into his backstory. You know, he's got this brother that trains him, and he's training for this race because he wants to stay on top as the world's fastest person, the fastest person alive. He faces this other superhero, and you find out later on they're making like a reality TV series with the Seven to show their origins, their backstory, their roots, to dive deeper into that. And he's on camera talking to the producer, and he's answering the question like, so how did this all come about? And he's like, well, truth be told, I didn't live in a safe neighborhood. I lived in a rough neighborhood, and there were some guys with some guns and he's trying to tell a story about how gun violence affected his family, affected him growing up. And the producer was like, yeah, no, we don't want to hear that. No. Like, it's we really can't be attached to gun violence, which is crazy considering all the shit these superheroes really voluntarily put themselves through, but also like have to deal with on a daily basis. So you start to feel for A-Train I mean, he sucks at the beginning. The first half, you're just like, this guy stinks. He has no regard for human life. Even his one appearance with the Make-A-Wish kid, which was hilarious, where like the kid has cancer and he's like, hey, what's going on? He's all happy and trying to act happy. And the kid's like, you weren't my wish, dude. Like, I wished for Translucent. Where's Translucent? Who is this guy that's kind of like Hollow Man meets Invisible Woman. He can only be invisible when he's naked, which comes into play. Puts a different spin on things when you hear the stories about him. But kid's like, yeah, I want Translucent. This is not my wish. I had one wish and I want Translucent, and now you're here. He's like, well, when you get through this, I'll teach you how to run. And the kid's like, you're going to teach me how to outrun cancer? I butchered the line, but you got it. Hilarious. And so you start to see that A-Train has this fear that he's about to be replaced for whatever reason. Not as marketable, not as likable as the other superheroes. He has to win this race to stay on top. And then we come to find out that he's taking this substance, performance-enhancing drug called Compound V. And then it all starts to get bigger and bolder and better from there. I mean, I can't say enough positive things about this show. I'm gushing. My living room is flooded. Okay. I'm wearing galoshes. Such a good show. The dialogue, the action. Carl Urban, who, trying to think of what people would know him from. He was in the Avengers. He was, one of the guys at Asgard. He had the two awesome machine guns that he was firing off. Valkyrie? No, that was a chick. But he plays a guy named Billy Butcher, who may or may not be with the FBI or the CIA. He's with some kind of federal intelligence agency, maybe. But he's kind of the leader of the boys. And he's the one who's very anti-superhero. Anti-Supes, as they're called. And he's just the stuff coming out of his mouth is just amazing. Just pure gold. I think he had the most one-liners in here, but he's also, he's on this warpath. He recruits Hughie, played by Jack Quaid, to get revenge against A-Train. And meanwhile, Billy Butcher wants revenge on this character called Homelander, who, in my opinion, really drives the show. He's the character that is just, your eyes are on him and they're not going anywhere else. He just sucks you in. He is Zach Morris meets Jerry O'Connell meets Superman meets Captain America. This guy has it all. The looks, the charm. He's religious, but he's also very, very pro-American. And his name, Homelander, pretty much makes sense because very in line with his personality. You think Homelander, you think Homeland Security. Homeland Security is the department created right after the 9/11 attacks to protect us from terrorists. And yet, spoiler, it turns out Homelander is using the Compound V to create super terrorists to create the need for him and his squad, the Seven. The end of season 1. Okay, they're the mayor of Baltimore, which I thought this was cool how they delve into the business aspect of things. Mayor of Baltimore, he said crime rate is way up. We don't have any superheroes. And so Madeline Stillwell from Vought, who's the VP of Hero Management, played by Elizabeth Shue, who did a phenomenal job. Just awesome job by her. Still looking great. Not that that has anything to do with anything. But she is trying to basically make a deal with the mayor of Baltimore to get them a superhero to bring the crime rate down so that this mayor can look like the hero in his own way and keep winning elections. As there's probably an election coming up. And so she makes an offer. He's like, No dice. And he makes a counteroffer, and she's like, no way, we can't do anything for less than this. And he's like, well, I know about Compound V, which this is like the main driving point of contention for the most of the series, is Compound V, which we think at first is just performance enhancing drugs that these superheroes are taking. And she's like, oh, okay, yeah, you got yourself a deal, Mayor. And then he's in his private jet with his son. Son's looking out the window, kind of sees something. It's raining, it's cloudy, it's foggy. Kind of sees something out the window and is like, what is that? And the mayor's like, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. It's just a little turbulence. And of course, it's Homelander. And he's got the laser eyes. And he just lasers the shit out of that private jet. Jet goes down, boom. And you're like, oh, okay. This is, whoa. What am I dealing with here? And the show's ability to mix humor with serious action, gore, heavy subjects. I mean, that's what kept me going. And you realize that Homelander is like the bizarro version of Superman and Captain America, and that Superman and Captain America dealt with these problems and these issues, same type of stuff, but they took always the good route. They always went for good and not evil. It also poses the question. It's like, you know, you find out why Homelander is the way he is, and you begin to question why Superman didn't act differently, knowing that he came from another planet. And I think that was addressed a little bit in Batman versus Superman. Dawn of Justice was like, hey, and this might be the inspiration, not the inspiration for Homelander, but it can give you a better idea of Homelander and what to think about him is like, Superman is an alien. And this is what Batman was saying in Batman versus Superman, was like, hey, this is an alien who's a god, almost can't be killed. He has an unlimited amount of power. That power is going to corrupt him. And when he turns on us, who stops Superman? And that's what you got with Homelander, is like, if Superman were corrupted and it was just like, I have all the powers in the world and you guys are ants, I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I want. And that's what's basically happening. So I'm like in love with the show. It's already been renewed. I think it was renewed for season 2 before season one even premiered. Season 1 came out in like July 26th. So it took me a while to come around on it, but I can't say. I mean, it's just like start to finish. I don't think there was one bad episode. You know, sometimes in a season, it's like, what was the point of that episode? What was the point of that storyline? Or what was the point of that? What was the point of that? Everything connected. Everything had a purpose or a porpoise, if you're the deep. And the ending. So you find out that Hughie ends up dating Starlight. He ends up getting her good graces because he doesn't really know that she's a superhero, and he's just treating her like a normal person. And they end up connecting and going on dates and hooking up. And of course, Billy the Butcher is basically not coercing or forcing Hughie, but basically directing and ordering Hughie to get closer to Starlight so they can get more information and they can figure out what's going on. And it's through their interactions that Hughie's able to find out, or that Billy Butcher is able to find out, that Compound V is being pumped into babies, select babies who are born normal humans, but they get pumped with this Compound V substance, and that's what gives them these superhero abilities. So superheroes are not born superheroes. They're actually humans pumped with the Compound V, which is fraudulent, major big time conspiracy level stuff, probably the worst in American history, because they've been Vought has been lying to the public and saying that these superheroes were created by God or naturally, and they're not. And so Billy the Butcher finds that out with another character named Mother's Milk, who I need to find out more about. I mean, he seems like a cool dude. He had a couple cool one-liners, but it's like the whole like, oh, I'm kind of pussy whipped by my wife. I have a normal home life, even though I work at a place for delinquents. Supposedly in the comics, his home life is a lot messier. And so maybe we'll get more of that in season 2. But so they stumble upon the Compound V, and we find out this whole big kind of conspiracy unravels. Homelander using the Compound V to create super terrorists, which creates the demand for superheroes to be given more access, more privilege, more power. Because right now they're held in check a little bit. Kind of like touches upon the subjects and topics of Avengers, or what was a result of Avengers Age of Ultron, where it's like people are like, we got to get these superheroes in check. Like they're destroying cities, tons of collateral damage. We need to put some kind of regulations, restrictions on these people, because if we don't, they're just going to run roughshod over the entire world. And us humans, normal humans, are going to suffer as a result. Which also kind of ties into, I guess, the backlash from like Man of Steel and movies like that, where you're seeing epic destruction, tons of destruction, and kind of caused by these superheroes, which it's collateral damage, but at the same time it's like, someone has to be accountable for this. We can't just say, oh, good job, thanks for saving us when destroying half our city. And so I think that's what the boys tackles, is like, there is a lot of red tape and paperwork and bureaucracy, people fighting over different things. It's not just as simple as like, thanks for saving us. It's going to be like, you need to be held accountable. And that was the major driver for like Madeline Stillwell and Homelander, is like, we're trying to get this contract passed through it's got to go through Congress, but we want to get this contract that essentially makes us like one of the top providers for national security and defense, which they end up landing the contract thanks to that brutal scene on the plane, dude. Oh, that plane sequence. I needed a moment after that. It took me a while to recoup. That was tough to watch. There's a plane hijacking. It's in international waters, so Homelander figures with Madeline Stillwell's backing, like, I can go in there, I can save the day, and then we can show the rest of the world that we're okay and that we're needed. And so they go in, Homelander and Queen Maeve try to save the plane, and it goes amok. It runs afoul. Doesn't go according to plan. They take out the terrorists, but they also take out the controls of the plane. And they figure out, okay, there's no way we're going to save this, so we're just going to bounce. And Queen Maeve is like, whoa, okay. I don't know if I'm on board with that. There's a lot of innocent people in this plane. We need to do something. And Homelander's like, dude, yeah, there's nothing I can do, really. So, oh, well. And then, as the show progresses, you see Homelander's like, you see why he is the way he is. Eventually, he starts to track down the truth. The reality TV series that A-Train was a part of, Homelander's a part of, they go to his home where his family lived, where he grew up. It's not really his home, not where his family grew up. He grew up in a lab. He was alone. He didn't have a mother and a father, and that's why he attaches to Madeline Stillwell, because he sees her as like a mother figure. There's a very Oedipus type vibe going on there. Like, be my mommy, but also want to like do ya. He's got a little bit of a mommy fetish. Like to see his Pornhub history. So yeah, I mean, they're not able to save the plane, which I heard in the comics. That team, it was all 7 of the 7 superheroes, and it's 9/11. and they're trying to save this one plane. I guess the government takes out the other 2 planes, but they're trying to save the one plane that's, about to crash on the towers, and they completely fuck that up, and it crashes in the Brooklyn Bridge, and they made it worse. But in this version, in the TV version, they aren't able to save the plane, and Homelander is able to use that as a rallying cry and say, like, he gives a very impassioned speech about how we're needed more than ever and blah, blah, blah. And so that's when they're able to land the contract. But he goes on his own little mission to find the truth, because Billy the Butcher his main goal is to get Homelander. And that's because he believes that Homelander raped his wife and then his wife disappeared. She either killed herself or was killed by Homelander, who wanted to cover it up. So that's what he's got in his noggin. Homelander finds out that Billy the Butcher is after him and is like, he had a wife, didn't he? Oh, yeah. Like, I had sex with her. That's when you find out. And he's like, what happened to her? Like, we had sex. And then she just disappeared. And then he starts questioning, asking around. And Homelander finds out she originally this guy, Dr. Vogelbaum, who apparently was in charge of the testing, and because Homelander was one of the first babies to be given compound V, and they raised him in a lab, and he tells Homelander, well, she became pregnant, but the pregnancy went a lot quicker than we all expected. It wasn't the normal 9 months. It was, a matter of days. And the baby tried to claw its way out. The mother died during birth. And of course, the baby drowned in the mother's blood. It was like, holy, that is a lot to digest right there. And then Homelander is like, okay, I guess I can buy that. But the best sequence, or the best exchange, is when Homelander is like, I'm the greatest. He's like, the Dr. Vogelbaum is explaining, like, hey, we fucked up. We made mistakes, and we know now that we should have put you with a family. And I can imagine what it's like to not live with a mom or dad or blah, blah. And of course, Homelander's kind of in denial mode. He's like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm the world's greatest superhero. And Dr. Vogelbaum goes, no, you're my greatest failure. It's like, oh boy. Yikes. And so I think Homelander is pretty pissed at Madeline Stillwell. He has this obsession with her. And someone put it really eloquently on Reddit. It was like, Homelander is not the jealous boyfriend. You often see him staring at the wall because he's got the X-ray vision, like Superman. So he's looking through the wall at Madeline Stillwell, and he's trying to eavesdrop because he has the super hearing when he focuses. And so he's trying to hear what she's talking about, because he's not the jealous boyfriend, even though it looks that way. He's actually the jealous child. When you see him interact with her, he kind of acts like a child. And he's constantly talking about that baby, because she has a baby. And he's like, oh, and this happens with kids. You have the first kid, and that's the center of your attention. That's your world. That's the sun. And then you have the second kid, and there's not as much attention for the first kid. So the first kid gets jealous. And so that's kind of like who Homelander is in this whole dynamic. And so he becomes furious with Madeline Stillwell. Billy Butcher able to get to Stillwell, kidnap her, hook her up to C4, threaten to blow her up, which Butcher, I guess his position as the protagonist early on, but he does some really fucked up shit. Shooting Starlight in the park when she's trying to take Hughie in and arrest him because of what he's done. And he just opens fire with a sniper rifle in the middle of the park in broad daylight and takes her down with 2 shots. And it's like, did he just murder Starlight? Like, is he that anti-superhero that he's willing to just like kill one in the middle of the day? And he also Mesmerizer, by the way, great cameo by Haley Joel Osment. Oh man, perfect casting. Did an amazing job. And when he takes out Mesmer in the bathroom and just collapses that dude's face on the sink, what? Very reminiscent of the home invasion scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when Brad Pitt just takes that chick's face and just like mashes it. And you're like, oh, ooh, shivers, shiver me timbers. But yeah, Butcher's no saint. And it's understandable to a certain degree, because it's like you lost the love of your life. You have no idea what happened to her. You're assuming the worst, even though, you know, you get angry at anyone who says that she's dead, even though you, in your back of your head, you're like, she's probably dead. So he gets Stillwell, holds her hostage, hooks her up to C4, and is about to blow her up. And Homelander comes in, and he comes in with the baby. And they're talking, and you're like, what is about to go down? And the one thing that Homelander wanted Stillwell to do, he wanted that level of trust. He didn't want to be lied to. And you find out that Stillwell lied to him because she was trying to protect him. And she's scared. Even though leading up to this whole series, it looked as if she was the one in power. She was the one who had control over him. She was really ultimately scared of who he was and what he was capable of. And he, I guess, exacerbates that fear by lasering her right in the eyeballs. Oh, man. That was a spectacle. And, of course, Billy the Butcher is watching this like, oh, Billy the Butcher. Billy Butcher is watching this like, okay, awesome. And, of course, Homelander turns and it's like, what the fuck are you going to do now, motherfucker? I just took out your bargaining chip. And this is where Billy Butcher's like, you know, the psycho switch flips and he just blows everything to smithereens, baby included. And you're like, oh, wow, this show, just when you got your finger on the pulse, they just like completely flipped the script. But the real plot twist ending, and which is why the show, for me, top 5, top 3 of the year, maybe higher. Just a revelation, as the critics would say. You figure, all right, Butcher's toast. Homelander probably survived. And cut to, fade in. Butcher's lying on his back on the lawn. You're like, oh, it's probably like a dream sequence. Or, I don't know, WTF, what the hell just happened? And Homelander comes into perspective. From Butcher's perspective, looking up, Homelander comes into frame. And he's like, hey, how you doing, buddy? And you find out that they're on the lawn of a house, different house. Out walks this kid, blonde kid, who looks kind of like Homelander. And out walks Becca, Billy Butcher's wife. I mean, chills, dude. All up and down my bod. And Butcher's just like, total disbelief. Like, thought you were dead. What's going on? Am I dreaming? Am I hallucinating? Can't believe this. And you find out she had the baby. She didn't die during childbirth. The baby didn't die. The baby's now 8, 9 years old. And Homelander's like, hey, you know, I'm not just Homelander. I'm your dad. And that's it. I mean, whoa, dude. So, yeah, I mean, there's a shit ton more I could talk about, but I've already wasted so much time. Don't look at like that, like a waste of time. You know, there were some good moments there. If you haven't seen it and you decide to watch this, more power to you. You don't want to pay for Prime. I get it. You probably wanted to pay for Prime after I did that. You're like, that is not worth saving $75.